Let us start with a prayer. Om Gananam Tva Ganapatim Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamasravastamam Yeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspada Anasranvannutibhissidasadanam Om Sri Mahaganadhipataye Namah Om Vrishabham Charshaninam Vishwarupamadabhyam Brahaspatim Varenyam Om Tad Vishno Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Suraya Divi Vachakshura Tatam. Can everybody say along with me Hare Ramakrishna 3 times? Om Hare Ramakrishna Hare Ramakrishna Hare Ramakrishna. Om Aim Hrim Shrim Klim Hasau Jagat Prasutyai Namah. Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalasphadikakritim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrivam Upasmahe. Om Shlim Dhrim Jyotirbrahmaya Namah. Okay, let us start. So, how many of you remember what I said in the last class about seeing children and siblings in the D7 and D3 charts? For me?
I can remember, but I try to recalculate.
Okay.
But I have problems in finding the second child. And
do you have an example? We'll take that example and see. Do you have an example chart? Do you have the chart where you have a problem?
Actually, I was looking at my own chart.
Okay, can you give the data?
So what we said, what I understood is we have to first count the third house from D3.
Are you looking at siblings or children?
The D3 chart.
Okay. If you are looking...
D7 chart is 7. So fifth house from the...
first you take the fifth house. That will be the first child.
Of my D7.
Yeah, in your D7, if you take the fifth house, that will be your child. That's why if we take the example, it will become clearer. So why don't you give the data?
We were looking at your subconscious and we could not, we were confused when we...
Okay. Okay, let me take my chart then. Kiran said that he is confused with my chart. Fourth one? NR, okay. I was expecting PVR.
Yeah.
Okay. The data is, actually this is wrong. I verified my files. The data that I use is April 4, 1970, 5:47:13 p.m., 5 hours, 47 minutes, 13 seconds. And the longitude and latitude, this place is Machilipatnam, slightly, those are also wrong. The longitude and latitude. 81 East 8, 16 North 10, and the time zone is 5:30 East. So this is the time according to my belief, as per my rectification. So I'll just save this. Okay. So we are looking at my own chart. I just set the data. Now what we want to see is we want to see the children and how to time what happens in the lives of children. So if you want to do that, Vimshottari Dasha is basically enough, even though it's not perfect, like I said in the last class. Now first thing is you have to identify the children. So for that, the first step is, like I said, fifth house will show the first child, but it can be fifth house counting forward or counting backward. And the way you count is dependent on whether Lagna, the ascendant in Saptamsha in D7, is an odd sign or even sign. So look at ascendant here. The ascendant is in Gemini in the D7 chart, in Saptamsha chart. So if you look from Gemini, we have to take the fifth house, which will be either this, Libra or Aquarius, if you count backward or forward. So how do we decide which one? See whether Gemini is odd or even. Is it an odd sign or even sign? 1, 2, 3. Starting from Aries as the first sign of the zodiac, Gemini is an odd sign in the zodiac. So take Gemini as Lagna, take Gemini being odd sign, count forward. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first child is shown by Mars or Libra. And what did I say? Did I say that you take the sign itself as the Lagna for the child, or did I say you have to take the Lord?
Third from it and take.
Not third, not third. Third will be for the next child, because third means younger brother. So if you take the 5th house, that will be the first child. If you take the third from there, Sagittarius, that will be the second child. If you take the third from there, that will be the next child, even that will be the third child, and so on. That is basically the procedure. But the important point is, when you find the corresponding sign to the child, you have to take the Lord of the sign, and see where the Lord is, and then that will be the sign that decides that becomes the Lagna of the child. So here, starting from Gemini, Libra is the 5th house, and the Lord Venus is here in Taurus. It doesn't mean my daughter, my first child, will have Taurus Lagna, but it basically shows that if you take Venus in Taurus as Lagna, if you take Taurus as Lagna and analyze this chart, you can see what happens in the life of my daughter.
How do you say it's a daughter or a son?
I don't want to do that right now, but the basic rules are, if the sign involved, not the 5th house, because that will always be odd or even based on Lagna. So not that sign, but the Lord, the sign containing the Lord, Taurus in this case. There are 3 principles. One is based on the sign, the other is based on the Lord, and the third is based on exceptions. And based on the signs, the rule is, if it's an even sign, it will be a daughter. If it's an odd sign, it will be a son. But the exceptions, like I said in the last class, are Gemini and Cancer, Aquarius and Pisces. These 4 signs are an exception. For those signs, it is reversed. Gemini is an odd sign. You would expect a male child, but it will be a female. For Cancer, you would expect female, but it's actually male. Similarly, Aquarius will be female and Pisces will be male. So those 4 are exceptions. For all other signs, it's based on odd sign giving a male child, even sign giving a female child. That's principle 1. And the principle number 2 is, look at the planets. Sun, Mars, Jupiter and Rahu. These planets will show a male child. Sun, Mars, Jupiter and Rahu. And then Moon and Venus and Ketu, they show a female child. And then Saturn and Mercury, those are the planets left out, and those planets, Saturn and Mercury, are eunuchs. Basically they don't have a sex, they don't have a preference. So if they are the planets who decide the child's sex, then you look at what are the other influences on them. They don't really have a preference. So that's basically principle number 2. And the third principle is, if the sign involved has an exalted planet, it will be a male child. If it has a debilitated planet, it is a female child. So that is principle number 3. So you look at these 3 principles and evaluate what are the influences. Whichever dominates, that influence will decide what the girl will be. And if you look here, what the child will be. If you look here, the sign containing the 5th Lord Venus is Taurus. What does Taurus show? Male child or female child? Female child, because it's an even sign. So principle 1 says female child. Now principle 2, actually let's leave principle 2, go to principle 3. Are there any exalted or debilitated planets here? No. Venus is not exalted there, Rahu is not exalted there. So let's forget exception, the third principle. So let's apply the second principle. The planets associated. Who are the planets here? Rahu and Venus. Rahu will show a boy and Venus will show a girl. So it's basically 50-50, it's half-half. But the sign will show a female child. So overall, what is dominating? Female child. That is what is dominating. And especially Venus is strong here. Compared to Rahu, Venus is in own sign, Taurus. So Venus is strong. So overall, you say it's a female child. And more importantly, it may be a child who has Venusian and Rahu influence on Lagna. It may or may not be the case, but there will be some influence. Whether it is a strong influence or not, that depends on so many other factors. But based on this, you can see that Venus has a strong influence in her chart. At least that is the way I look at her. That is the way, as far as I am concerned, my first child has lot of Venusian influence. It may show up in the chart or it may not show up. Like I said in the last class, if you look at father's D7 and mother's D7 and try to look at the child, at the same child, the indications may not exactly be the same. So father may have a different impression about the reality of the child. Based on father's mind and based on mother's mind may be different. Like I said, my father may be thinking about me right now. oh, he's an intelligent person, he's an engineer, he's an astrologer. But my mother may be thinking he ignores his health, he doesn't sleep well. So my mother's image of me may be different. So these charts, this D7, this Saptamcha in my chart does not show everything about my wife, my daughter. It is not the complete reality about my daughter. It is the reality about my daughter and my son as far as I am concerned. And in my wife's D7, it will be the reality, it will be a snapshot of the complete reality about our children from our wife's point of view. So from my point of view, what you can see is I see my daughter as, because it's Taurus, as a hardworking person, because it's Venus, as a very passionate person, as a creative person. That's basically how, it's not just the image, it is basically how she is from my point of view. It is how she, even from the point of view of reality, not Maya, because I'm not talking about Arudhas here. Even from the point of view of reality, that is how she is basically from my point of view, from my vantage point. This is basically my vantage point, my daughter and son from my vantage point. Now, the thing is, if you actually look at my daughter's chart, if you really look at her chart, she has Kanya Lagna, she has Virgo Lagna with Rahu in the Lagna, Rahu in Mula Trikona in Lagna, so she has a strong Rahu in Lagna, and Venus is exalted in Pisces. So Lagna is here with Rahu in it, and Venus, Saturn and Ketu are here in Pisces. So she has the 9th Lord Venus in exaltation in the 7th house, giving Lakshmi Yoga, giving Malavya Yoga, and that Venus is aspecting Lagna. So she has a strong Venusian influence on her. And moreover, her Atmakaraka is Venus. I haven't really defined Atmakaraka until now, but there is a planet called Atmakaraka, which basically shows your true nature, the nature of the soul within you. Atma means soul, Atmakaraka means significator of the soul. He represents the soul, represents your soul. And for her, that planet is Venus. So Venus being Atmakaraka, Venus giving Mahapurusha Yoga, Venus giving several yogas, and that Venus aspecting Lagna. That makes her a strong Venusian person. Even though she also has Jupiter in own sign, in Sagittarius, in the 4th house, giving another Mahapurusha Yoga, Hamsa Yoga, it is Venus who is really dominating her personality, because he is also Atmakaraka. So she is a very creative person, has lot of Venusian qualities. So that actually tallies with what you see in my chart. And then second child, if you want to see the second child, the second child will be seen from the 3rd from the 5th house, the 7th house. Now, the rule is, when you are going like this, whenever you encounter Rahu and Ketu, there is an end. Yeah. So here, when you go from Libra to Sagittarius, you are jumping over a strong Ketu. Ketu wants to put an end to everything. He just wants to cut off everything. So when you are jumping over Ketu, he will try to hold the jump, and then he will try to stop the second child. So had Jupiter not been here in Sagittarius, Ketu would have stopped. This person would have had only one child. But because the planet who is causing the second child is Jupiter, and he's in own sign, he's really strong, he will dominate. Even though Ketu wants to stop him, pull this frog that is jumping, the frog of giving children. This is called Manduki Gati, the frog jump. The frog is jumping from the first child sign to the second child sign, and Ketu wants to hold the frog, but Jupiter is helping it coming to Sagittarius. So it's really Jupiter who gave the second child. Without Jupiter's blessings, the second child would not have come. So here, Jupiter being strong, and the sign involved being an earth sign, because Jupiter is an earth sign itself. The Lord of Sagittarius, he is in Sagittarius itself. In the case of first child, even though the sign was Libra, we looked at the Lord and we went to Taurus to see the fortune of the first child. To see the fortune of the second child, you take Sagittarius itself, because the Lord is right there. And then, based on the first principle, the sign, is it odd or even? Odd. So it will be a male child. Based on the second principle, the planets. Who are the planets involved there? Just Jupiter. Jupiter shows male child. So based on every principle, it has to be a male child. So my second child is indeed a son, and he has a strong Jupiter in his chart. He has, strong Jupiter in his chart. He has Jupiter in Pisces, in Purva Bhadrapada 4th quarter, which means he is in own sign, and exalted Navamsha and in O Nakshatra. So Purva Bhadrapada, fourth quarter is really an auspicious quarter, auspicious constellation quarter for Jupiter to be, because he is in one sign, that too the sign of Maharshis, more than Sagittarius, even though Sagittarius is also powerful, it is Mula Trikona, Pisces is more Sattvic, and being in that sign, Sagittarius is also Sattvic, but Pisces is more peaceful. So he is in Pisces, the sign of Maharshis, in one Nakshatra and exaltation sign in Navamsha. So Jupiter is really strong in his chart, and even though he has several other planets, he has Dharma Karmadhipati Yoga given by Mercury and Moon, and he has Lakshmi Yoga given by Mercury and Venus. He has other yogas. He has Libra Lagna. My son, my second child, has Libra Lagna, and he has 4 planets in the 10th house. He has Moon, Mars, Mercury and Venus. So the Lord of Lagna, the Lord of the 7th house, the Lord of 9th house, the Lord of the 10th house, they are all together in the 10th house of Karma. So that basically results in several Rajyogas. And however, the Arudha Lagna is in Capricorn, and if you look in the 3rd and 6th from Arudha Lagna, I said if you want to see somebody, whether somebody is saintly or whether somebody is a materialistic achiever, I said that you have to look at the 3rd and 6th from Arudha Lagna. So if you see the Arudha Lagna, the 3rd and 6th are, the 3rd is occupied by Jupiter and the 6th is empty, and there is no other planet aspecting them. Even if the 3rd and 6th have benefic planets, if you have the sign aspect from malefic planets on those signs, still there can be some non-saintly qualities in the person. But here the 3rd and 6th are absolutely unblemished. So irrespective of the other Rajyogas, Jupiter really dominates his nature. Jupiter sets the basic nature of the person. So my second son is very, very soft spoken, doesn't hurt anybody, he's always sweet. Even if somebody shouts at him or somebody hits him, he just walks away smiling. He doesn't get angry very easily. Even though he's a child, he shows the qualities of child now and then. He's far more mature than you would expect for his age. He's only 5 now. He'll be 6 in a couple of weeks, in a week or a couple of weeks. So, and also the thing is that Jupiter has Graha Drishti on all these planets. Whenever you have a great Rajyoga or several Rajyogas in any sign, if you have a planet aspecting those Rajyogas, especially a planet like Jupiter and Saturn, they can really dominate because they have a desire to influence the karma. The karma of my second child is from Cancer, and Jupiter in Pisces has Graha Drishti on Cancer. So he has a desire to influence them. So if things are conducive to fulfilling the desire, he will fulfill that desire. So Jupiter really dominates his chart, just like you can see from my Saptamsha chart. So this is basically how you see. Now if you want to make specific predictions about the children, what you do is, see for example right now what dasha am I running? If you look at my Vimshotri dasha, right now it's Mercury dasha that I am running. So let's say my first child. If you take my first child, take Taurus as Lagna. So what houses does Mercury own from Taurus? The 2nd house and the 5th house. 2nd house of family, money, resources, speech, etc. And the 5th house of scholarship. I mean, it also shows children, etc. But she is a child, so we don't want to look at children. So 5th house also shows abilities, scholarship, etc. So basically, this is a time when she shows her abilities. She keeps learning things, etc. And if you look at my second child, for my second child, take Sagittarius as Lagna, and Mercury owns the 7th house of relationships, interactions, etc. and the 10th house of karma, and he is in the 5th house of scholarship and abilities. So basically what you see, because those are children right now, you don't want to see whether they will get married or they will have children, whether they will be famous. That doesn't happen in Mercury Dasha. So all you can say based on this current Dasha is they will be learning well, because Mercury is associated with the 5th house of abilities. When you are looking at children, 4th and 5th house are very important. 4th house shows education, 5th house shows abilities and scholarship, and then 6th house is also important because that is health. You want to see if health is bad. So if a planet involved with the 6th house is operating, maybe there will be some problems with health. So this is basically how you look at things. And if you look at Ketu Dasha, let's see the Ketu Dasha for my second child. So during 2011-2018 in my chart, At that time, my second child will roughly be 13 years of age to 20 years of age. He is a teenager in the time frame. But if you look at Ketu, from Sagittarius, Ketu is in 12th house in own sign. 12th house is the house of moksha, giving and also moksha. So whenever you see Ketu in the moksha sthana, because Ketu is moksha karaka, he is the significator of moksha, significator of liberation. So if he also occupies the 12th house, that is really powerful. What that means is, during my Ketu dasha, my second child will definitely be very spiritual. It doesn't mean he will get moksha in that time. He is just a teenager. But for a teenager, he will basically be more interested in religious matters, and more than religious matters, spiritual matters. And he will become very spiritual. There will be some important events in his life from the point of view of spirituality. Of course, if you look at his chart, things will become much more clear. You can get much clearer indications. But based on my chart, this is what you can say about his saptamsha. So is that clear? So this is how you look at. You first see whether lagna is odd or even. If it's odd, count forward. If it's even, count backward. And look at the fifth sign or fifth house. That will be the first child. And thereafter, take the third from there. That is younger sibling. So my second child, my son, is the younger sibling of my first child. That is why we took the third house from the fifth. So take 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th and so on. And what happens when you finish 6 signs and when you come back to the same sign? There is something that you have to do. There is a jump that you have to do. I won't go through that, because these days you won't anywhere find somebody who has 6 children. And actually there is another principle. You won't find in today's age in America, you won't find people who have more than 6 children, but you do find people who have more than one wife or one husband. And you do have people who get children from more than one man or one woman. So that is important. Let me cover that. For that what you do is, the first child, pardon me?
Very quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
Find Lord of the sign. For example, in this chart,
Yeah,
we could find Venus there.
yeah.
Suppose if it is not there in the chart, then
He will be there in some sign. What do you mean he is not there? Every planet will be there in some sign or the other. Right? If Venus wasn't in Taurus, he would be in Aries or Pisces or one of the 12 signs. So wherever he is, take that sign as lagna. Do you understand? Probably what you are trying to say is, by he not being in the chart, you probably mean he is not somewhere else but in the sign itself, like Jupiter. Then take the sign itself as the lagna. Okay? Okay. So that is basically what you do, and then take that sign as lagna, and then you get basic qualities of that person. And you can also see, looking at dasha, you can also time important events in the life. But don't try to time. If somebody is appearing for an examination and you want to see whether he will be successful or not during that particular month, you can't really get such precise results. There is a different dasha, a Narayan dasha, which you compute just for each individual child. With that you can get precise results. But with normal Vimshottari dasha, don't expect precise results for every child. They will be only approximate. But results like in Ketu dasha, he will be very spiritual because Ketu is in the 12th house. Those results will basically hold. Maybe not for entire the 7-year period, but maybe there is a 3-year period within that when the results will be experienced. So to some extent it will definitely manifest, but it's not really very precise. So keep that in mind when you look at Vimshottari dasha for to judge results of your family members. And now, if it is Drakana, if you want to see younger and elder siblings, the principle is basically the same. What you do is, you look at the 3rd house for the first younger sibling, and then 3rd thereafter. The third house from Lagna will be the first younger sibling. The second younger sibling, who is younger to the first younger sibling, will be from the 3rd, and then you take another 3rd to get the next younger sibling. So like that you go on 3rd. In the case of elder siblings, you take 11th. The 11th house will be the first, the elder sibling who was born just before you, and the one who was born even before him, that will be 11th from 11th, which will be 9th. So you keep doing that. But however, counting 3rd, 11th, etc. will be either forward or backward based on Lagna being odd or even. So remember that basic principle. And then there are special conditions, like if Ketu is in Lagna, if there is a strong influence of Ketu, you may have to reverse the direction. Even though, for example, in my D7, let us say Ketu was here in Gemini, in ascendant. So even though R sign ascends, I would have counted backward because Ketu tries to reverse everything. Whatever you do, Ketu tries to reverse that. So if you find Ketu in Lagna, you may have to reverse it. And now the important thing is, when you hear principles, they will make sense, but when you actually start applying them in real charts, then you will see all the kinks in your armor, all the things that you did not pay attention to, you will realize them. So what you have to do is take examples where you are reasonably comfortable with the time and you know something about the person and the person's siblings and children, and then you will use those examples, and then you will perfect your understanding. And then one word of caution. In the case of D3, results, sometimes you get good results, but not always. I'm not really sure if D3, the Drakana chart as we use today, is really perfect, or there are some missing links somewhere, because it doesn't work. In my experience, in my humble limited experience, it's not perfect. Sometimes you just have to somehow explain things away and satisfy yourself, even though it doesn't make perfect sense. So maybe there are some missing links. So if you want to learn this, I advise don't pay much attention to D3, because I'm suspicious that there are some missing links there. On the other hand, with D7, things work beautifully. As long as you have the right Lagna, things just work beautifully. Regarding sex, there are predicting the sex of the child. There are some more principles that I haven't said, like exchange between planets that can reverse the sex. There are some exceptions that I haven't covered, and those are not important, because when do you have to predict the sex of a child? Only when somebody is pregnant and they don't know before they get the ultrasonic test done. So it's not really practically so important. So I haven't spent time on it. Maybe later I can do that, but there are many more exceptions. So don't pay attention to the sex, but pay attention to the basic nature, and whether the person is intelligent or not, whether they are learned, what kind of career they have. So in order to see all those things, for that you can use D7 and the Vinchotri Dasha. Yes, Palni?
For wife's case,
Yeah?
in D7, it is not the fifth house, right? It should be... Like
What do you mean wife?
the mother side. Mother side, like if you want to use...
Oh, if I want to use a mother's chart and look at the D7, it is still the same.
Fifth house?
Yes. What you are getting confused with, because you know more than what everybody else knows, because you have read other books, that's why you are getting confused. There is another principle. Apart from seeing the first child, second child and third child, to see the overall happiness with children, overall luck, overall fortune with children. For that, the principle is in male charts. By male charts, what I mean is chart of a man. In male charts, look at the fifth house, irrespective of whether earth sign rises or even sign rises. Even if Gemini wasn't rising, even if Cancer was rising, I would take the fifth house, which is Scorpio, and then look at where the lord of that house is. Is he well placed in the chart? Is he badly placed? So from that, from the strength of the lord of that sign, you can see whether that person is successful, not successful, whether that person is happy with children, fortunate with respect to children or not. In the case of female charts, charts of ladies, you take the ninth house from Lagna, irrespective of whether Lagna is earth sign or even sign. So to see overall luck with respect to children, you take the fifth house in male charts, ninth house in female charts. That is principle 1. Principle 2 is, in order to see individual children, you start counting from Lagna, forward or backward based on Lagna being odd or even, and fifth house will be the first child. That is same for male as well as female charts. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Now if you want to do that analysis in my chart, if you look at Gemini Lagna, Venus is the fifth lord, and where is he placed? 12th house. Normally you may say that 12th house is a Dusthana, but the thing is he is in own sign. If the Dusthana lord is in own sign, the fifth lord is basically placed in own sign, and if the sixth lord is in sixth house itself, that is called Harsha Yoga. Harsha means cheerful. If the eighth lord is in eighth house, basically in own sign, that is called Sarala Yoga. Sarala means straightforward. It may also be translated as naive, but it's actually more like straightforward, not really wicked, very straightforward, very honest. That is Sarala Yoga. I have that yoga. I have Mars 8th Lord in 8th house. So usually I am very straightforward. I don't like beating around the bush or playing games or saying something when you are here, something when you are not there. So those are basically the qualities of people who have Sarla Yoga, 8th Lord in 8th house. Similarly, people who have 6th Lord in the 6th house, they will be very cheerful, always very happy, very pleasant, very peaceful, very basically in peace with themselves. And similarly, people who have 12th Lord in 12th house, they have a yoga called Vimala Yoga. So these three yogas go together, Harsha, Sarala and Vimala. Cheerful, straightforward and pure. Vimala means unsullied. So that means there is some purity to that person. That planet, that particular planet will give some purity because they can give very happily. 12th house is the house of giving. If the 12th Lord is in 12th house, they can give very happily. So that means they don't want anything. If you are able to give happily, that means you are contented. So 12th Lord in 12th house is a combination for contentment and purity of purpose. So that is a good yoga. And so here Venus is placed in one sign. So basically you can say that overall I am very happy and contented with children. That is what Venus would show. On the other hand, one second, if you see Venus, let's say, placed in the 6th house, somebody has, let's say, Gemini Lagna in D7, but the 5th Lord Venus is, let's say, in the 6th house. 6th house is usually a Dusthana, and moreover 6th house is Manakaraka Sthana for Venus. For each planet I said that there is one house which is Manakaraka Sthana. Marana means death, Karaka means causing. Manakaraka Sthana means death inflicting house. So for Sun it is 12th house, for Moon 8th house, Mars and Mercury 7th house, Jupiter 3rd house, Venus 6th house, Saturn 1st house, Rahu 9th house. These are the Manakaraka Sthana. So if you see somebody with Gemini Lagna in D7 having Venus in the 6th house, you don't have to look at other things like where the 5th Lord is, where the 7th Lord is, where the 9th Lord is, so how will be the first child, how will be the second child, irrespective of all those things. One thing that you can right away say is the person will be unhappy with respect to children, very dissatisfied, very unfortunate. So you will have to suggest some remedial measures to that person. You will have to strengthen that 5th Lord. If Venus is, let's say, in the 6th house, you will have to pray to maybe Lakshmi or Mother Mary, depending on your belief. You would pray to some god or some saint or some force that represents Venus. You need Venus, blessings from Venus in order to correct the situation. That is basically bad. And similarly, you do in D3 you don't have this concept of overall happiness with siblings. You only look at individual. You only look at the individual siblings and you make predictions about them.
Can the Venus in 12th house also show settlement in abroad?
Not really. Okay. Not really. Because we are not looking at the chart that shows where you live. We are looking at the chart that shows who your children are and what kind of relations you have with them and whether you are happy or not. So another thing that you can do is, if you remember, I looked at the Dwadashamsya of Sanjay Gandhi in the last class and I saw his father, his mother's father, and I saw what were the relations between them. And if you want to do that here, you could look at Lagna Lord. Lagna Lord will be me from the point of view of children. So if you look at Lagna Lord, where is Lagna Lord? In the 11th house. So Mercury in Aries basically shows me. And if you look at my first child, my daughter, that will be this. So you look at the relation between them. So based on that, you can see what kind of relations I have with my first child. So if you look at Mercury and Venus, they are in Vridvadashas. Mercury is in the 12th from Venus, Venus is in the 2nd from Mercury. So because they are in 2nd or 12th from each other, that's not a very good relationship. The worst relationship is what I said last class, Shashtastaka or Shadashtaka, 6th and 8th relationship. If two planets are in the 6th or 8th from each other, for example, if you remember Sanjay Gandhi's chart, in his Dwadashamsa, Mercury in Aquarius showed his father and some planet in Cancer showed his grandfather, maternal grandfather. And we saw that they were in 6th and 8th from each other. So his maternal grandfather and father were always at loggerheads with each other. They were always fighting. Firoz Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, they were always fighting with each other. There was a lot of bad blood between them. And like that, 6th and 8th is really bad. 2nd and 12th is also bad, but not that bad. And what alleviates the situation here is Mercury and Venus are friends. Had it been Sun and Saturn in 2nd and 12th from each other, it would have been worse. Because Mercury and Venus are basically friends, basically very good friends. They are normally friends, right? Mercury and Venus are natural friends. And if you look at the temporary relationship, planets who are in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 12th, 11th and 10th are temporary friends also, if you remember. So if you look at Mercury, nobody in Mankarkasthana, click the wrong one. If you look at the relationships, the permanent relationship wise, for Mercury, Rahu and Venus are friends. Saturn is neutral. So you can see all the relationships. The grey is neutral, red is enemy, green are friends. And if you look at the temporary relationships, based on the current placements, for Mercury, Venus, Rahu and Saturn and Sun, they are friends. Others are basically people who are far away from you are your enemies. People who are your neighbors, who live nearby, they are your friends. But people who live in the same house are your enemies. Just like husband and wife always fighting. So that is the way to remember it. So these are the temporary relationships based on how planets are placed in the chart. And if you combine the two, you get compound relationships. So you see that for Mercury, Saturn is a friend, not a great friend, not an adhimitra, just a friend. But Venus and Rahu are, along with Sun, are adhimitras. Adhimitra means very close friend. So Mercury and Venus are very close friends. If you do the same analysis for Venus, you will find the same thing. Mercury will be an adhimitra. So because the first thing you have to see is the basic relationship between the two planets. Not just the permanent relationship, but the compound relationship. You look at the compound relationship between the planets. So that will tell you that will tell you one level. Basically, at an inherent level, what is the relationship, and then based on whether they are in 6th, 8th or not, you will see how they behave. So overall here, even though there are some negative indications, even though sometimes I may hurt her, she may hurt me, overall there is a lot of harmony between my first child and my second child. And if you look at Mercury and Jupiter, the second child and me, they are in trines. That is the best possible relationship. If you see two planets in trines, those two persons will have a very good relationship. If you see them in quadrants, they will have a good relationship, but they will have to keep working for it. Because like I said earlier, quadrants are Vishnu sthanas. Quadrants are the houses of effort, and trines are the houses of blessings. So here the relationship between me and my second child is a blessing given to me by God because of my past karma. On the other hand, if had Jupiter been in, let's say, in Cancer, still I would have a good relationship, but it would require some effort on the part of my son as well as me. But here, without any effort, I just love him. I just have a very positive impression of him. He has a very positive impression of me, and we will have a very good relationship throughout life. So that's what this placement would show. On the other hand, had Jupiter been here in Scorpio, I would have had a troublesome relationship with my second son. So like this, you can see a lot of examples where you know that there are some problems between father and son, or father and mother, or mother and son. You can look at the Saptamsha, Navamsha, etc. charts, and you can see what is the relationship, and you can correlate. Okay. Now, what I want to do is, so far what we have been doing is looking at the natal chart. When a person is born, we statically draw a chart which is valid for the entire life. And you can make predictions about the person, about wife, about children, about father, about mother, about grandfather, about all the relations of the person. You can make predictions. And I said that in order to make predictions, you look at these dashas, antardashas, and then you say during this period these are the results. But the thing is, in many practical situations, that is not enough. If you know that a person is running a good 2.5 year period, it doesn't mean if somebody comes and asks you, hey, for example, after one of the classes, Kiran came and asked me, his brother is appearing for a chartered accountant examination, CA examination in India, and he wanted the results were going to come in the next 10 days. He wanted to find out whether he will be selected or not. And if you want to look at the next 10 days, if you look at the dashas, you can't really be 100% sure. If he is running a good 3 year period, when you see that some good will happen in his education, maybe it will be next year. Maybe he will not do well this year, but maybe after 6 months or 1 year, he will appear for the exams again, and maybe he will do well. Or maybe the D24 Lagna is wrong. So whatever conclusions I arrive at based on the D24 chart about his education, they may not be perfect. So there is so much groundwork you have to do, and even after doing that groundwork, you have only the resolution of like 2 years. Of course, you can go to Pratyantar Dasha also, but it's not very easy judging Vimshottari Dasha and making precise predictions about the next month being good or bad, the next week being good or bad. And again, there are principles based on transits, Gochara, which basically traces the planets as they move, and with respect to the natal positions, where the planets are right now, whether they are giving good results or bad results. Again, there are principles that work well, but they are not perfect. So, using the principles of classical Jyotish, you can make predictions, but you can't be 100% correct always. So, what I want to present is another approach. There is an approach called, that is actually the approach I use to answer your question. There is an approach called Tithi Pravesha. This is basically, you can translate it into English as lunar return charts. Some of you who dabbled with Western astrology, not just sunshine astrology, but serious Western astrology, may know that there are so-called solar return charts. You look at where sun is at somebody's birth, and then after 365.2425 days, sun will come to the exact same position. So that is called solar return. Exactly at that time you cast a chart, and then you see how the next 1 year will be for that person. So this birthday will come around your birth. If you are born on February 7, let's say, or August 7, this solar return may come on August 7 or August 8 or August 6. It will be a day or two away from the birth date, because the way the Western calendar is set, some months have 31 days, some have 28 days. It's just arbitrarily divided. There's no astronomical basis for it. It's an arbitrarily, somebody just wanted to align the solar calendar with the civil calendar based on days and nights. So they just aligned it randomly, arbitrarily. So the exact solar return day will vary 1 day or by 1 day or 2 days. But the bottom line is, it will come around the Western calendar based birthday. And many people in India today celebrate their birthday based on the English date, based on August 7, August 8, like that. But some of you who are from India may know that some people celebrate their birthdays based on the Tithi. If you are born, for example, Sri Rama's birthday is celebrated on Chaitra, in the lunar month of Chaitra, on Shukla Navami, the ninth lunar day of the bright fortnight. And Krishna's birthday is celebrated on Krishna Ashtami, in the darker fortnight, on the 8th day in a particular month. So like that, Buddha is Vaishaka Purnima. So like that, Guru Nanak is Kartika Purnima. Like that, all the birthdays, not just for gods and great gurus, but even for individuals, it is customary in India to celebrate the birthday based on the Tithi, based on the lunar day. So there is a system called Tithi Pravesha, which is based on this lunar calendar. So what you do is, you see when the lunar birthday comes, and then exactly at the time when the Tithi of your birth comes, and the percentage of the Tithi left, it matches the percentage when you were born. Let's say somebody was born on Chaitra Shukla Tritiya, in a particular, let's say Chaitra Shukla Tritiya. When Chaitra Shukla Tritiya comes, and when exactly, let's say 10% of the Tithi was over and 90% was left when the person was born. When exactly 10% is over and 90% is left, then you make a chart. And then you can say what happens during that time with lot of confidence. And this is actually the technique that I used in the last 5 years. 90% of the correct predictions that I made to people came based on this particular technique. Instead of using Jyothishya Dasha, Narayana Dasha, I use them also, because if you don't see the basic potential of a good event, just because an annual chart shows it, you can't make that prediction. So it is wise to use the Vimshottari Dasha and others also. But sometimes when you are busy, when you just have 5 minutes, and when somebody asks you for a prediction, you can just look at Tithi Pravesha and make the prediction. It has a very good chance of coming true. So what you do is, and for those of you who have the software, there is a little bit of trick involved in the computation. I will not really go through that right now. The computations can be left out for future classes, because you have the software. All of you have the software, and even those who are listening to the CD, listening to the MP3 audio on the internet, You may not have the commercial software like I gave to all these people, but the light version, the latest light version that is on the internet, the free light version, that also has Tithi Pravesha. I added Tithi Pravesha because it's such an important technique. So you can download and experiment with Tithi Pravesha. What you do is, in the software, go to a tab that says Tithi Pravesha. And then Pravesha means basically entry. So Tithi Pravesha means entry into the Tithi. That is why the name is given. And another important point is, this technique is not found in any literature. Either Parasara's works or Jaimini's works that are available today do not have this technique. So we don't really have a classical basis for this. However, this comes from our tradition. It's not something that I conjured up. This comes from the tradition that I belong to. Pandit Sanjay Rath was taught by his grandfather, and his grandfather was taught by his guru. So it has been coming in the tradition as a secret. And in old days, all these traditions used to be secretive, and they used to keep techniques that really work well. They used to keep them as secrets and teach them only to their favorite students, in whom they had a great belief. So for all other people, they will teach Vimsho Tridasha, Ashto Tridasha and whatnot. But things that really work very well, they are kept as secrets, and only people you really trust in will be taught. But for good or bad, Pandit Sanjay Rath and I decided that we will reveal it to the whole world. We did not want to keep any secrets. So basically we hope that the knowledge is so corrupted in this tradition of one person teaching to another person. There are corruptions that came. So we want to give it to people so that people can experiment, do research and refine this knowledge. So time will decide whether this is a good decision or bad decision, because elders had reason for keeping them secretive. So God will decide that, but we have made a decision to reveal this. So a couple of years back, we both made a presentation on this technique, a one-day long tutorial at a conference in California. So the basic principle is the same. When it comes to judging what happens to your first child, second child, what happens in your career, what happens in your education, when you want to see all those things, the basic principles are the same. The only difference is, this chart does not apply to the whole life. It applies to a particular year. And there are two important differences between natal chart and this chart that you have to be aware of. There is a so-called Lord of the year, the ruler of the year. He is like the planet who possesses you for the year, the planet that controls your life for the year. And that planet can be found as, if you look at the hora, based on the hora that is running at the time the year starts, that planet is the ruler of the year. So when the year commences, look at the hora. Is it sun hora, moon hora, which planet's hour is running? So the planet whose hour is running, he becomes the ruler of the year. So you see the hora lord and then see where he is placed. What are the houses he owns in Rashi chart and divisional charts? Where is he placed? Based on that, you can see what is the important event of the year. So that is principle number one. And principle number two, do not use Vimsho Dasha. It does not work perfectly. Use a dasha known as Tithi Ashtotri Dasha. It's a variation of Ashtotri Dasha based on Tithis. So there is a link here called Tithi Ashtotri Dasha. And for those, all of you have commercial software, I have given that to you so you can experiment. And those who are listening to the audio, please note that Tithi Ashtotri Dasha was added to the latest free version also, free light version. So you can, if you download it, you have Tithi Pravesh as well as you have Tithi Ashtotri Dasha. So if you click on this, you can go to that Dasha. Otherwise, you can go in the Dashas tab. There are Nakshatra Dashas, Rashi Dashas and other Dashas. This is under other Dashas, and if you click on Tithi Ashtotri Dasha, then you get this Dasha. Or another easy way is, in the Tithi Pravesha tab, click on the Tithi Ashtotri Dasha link. Yes?
But if you don't know the exact birth time,
yeah?
is there any way that this Tithi you can find out?
Well, if you don't know, if you, for example, we took an example of his sister. We looked at, she had a divorce proceeding, so we looked at the Navamsa and we said, this is the 14-minute window in which she was born. We could not rectify further. And let us say, if you look at the Tithi Pravesha chart of the year when divorce proceedings started, and let us say the Navamsa Lagna in that chart doesn't make sense. If you look at the Navamsa Lagna and try to see why during this year divorce proceedings started, let us say it doesn't make sense. And let us say if you move the Lagna by one side, let us say it makes sense. So you can say, oh, so this Lagna is wrong. And then the bottom line is that the windows in the natal chart and the windows in Tithi Pravesha charts, they are not aligned to each other. They are different windows. So based on this, you can say, oh, Navamsha in this particular year's chart has to be Pisces, not Aries. And then you can say, so this is the window in which she was born. So based on the intersection of the two windows, based on natal chart and Tithi Pravesha chart, you can rectify further. So using Tithi Pravesha, you can rectify further. Yes, so you have a good point. You can do that. But basically the bottom line is, I will go through examples, but you basically do the same thing. You look at the chart, the divisional chart that you are concerned with. For example, if you want to see how the marriage is during the year, go to Navamsha. If you want to see learning, go to D24. Go to the correct chart and make sure that the lagna is basically in the middle of the sign. If it is too close to a border, consider two possibilities. Let us say in Navamsha, Gemini seems to be, in Saptamsha, let's say Gemini seems to be rising in a particular year's chart. But let us say it is too close to the border between Taurus and Gemini. Then consider both Taurus and Gemini and see which one explains what you know. So before you make predictions about future, it's always a good idea to go to the past and make sense of it. So let us see an example. In my life, what I consider an important event is in 1987. In 1987, in the higher secondary examinations in my state in India, I came state first, and I was selected to Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Madras. They have an entrance exam. It's considered one of the best institutes in India and even Asia. So I got selected in the entrance examination and I went to IIT. So all those things happened at the end of May and the beginning of June. On May 28, 1987, I stood state first. The results came of that examination. So if you look at 1987, another thing you have to remember is, if a person is born in November and if you are looking for an event in January 87, you better take the annual chart of 86, because that will cover the time that you are interested in. And here I was born in April and the event I want to look at is in May and June. So I will make the Tithi Pravesha of the year itself. So I type 1987 in year and I say find Tithi Pravesha chart. And what we find in this Tithi Pravesha chart, we will see after we come back. Those of you who are listening to the MP3, download the second MP3.
1987 is not a birth year.
No, the birth year is 1970. If you look at the data, I was born on April 4, 1970 at 5:47:13 p.m. at Machilipatnam, India. But let's say back to natal chart. So you will see the natal chart now. This will say April 4, 1970. But if you say 1987 and find Tithi Pravesha chart, I am clicking this button. If I do that, see, this says annual TP. It doesn't say natal chart. It says annual TP. So now the software will show you the annual TP chart. TP is an abbreviation for Tithi Pravesha. I call it TP. So if you look at annual TP chart, so Sagittarius is rising. The rising sign is different. So there are different principles for judging Tithi Pravesha, but I will go through them in detail in another class. For now, what we will do is, we will just look at the Hora Lord, Tithi Ashtotri Dasha, and all the basic principles as in natal chart, and we will make some sense of it. So, I don't remember who was the Hora Lord. Yes, good. So look at the Hora Lord. Who is the ruler of the year? Jupiter. If you look at Hora Lord, it is Jupiter. And here you will see two Hora Lords, Hora Lord and Mahakala Hora in the software. The thing is, there are different definitions of Hora. One is based on sunrise, another is based on a fixed time, based on 6 a.m. LMT, local mean time. So that is, I call that Mahakala Hora. That is Mahakala. He does not respect sun. He does not respect sunrise. He is systematic, disciplined. That is basically Mahakala. He stands for Saturn. So it is Saturnine time, which is based on a fixed clock kind of time. It is not based on when sun rises, when moon rises. So that is Mahakala Hora. There are Horas based on that division of the time. Those are fixed. Every day at 6 a.m. local mean time, the new day starts. If it is Sunday, Sun Hora starts. If it is Moon Day, Monday, Moon Hora starts, and so on. But on the other hand, there is another Hora based on sunrise. At the time when sun rises, the Hora of the weekday Lord will start. For example, on a Thursday, if sun rises at 6:30 a.m., then Jupiter Hora will start at 6:30 a.m. So that is normal Hora, sunrise based Hora. And for the principle that I have said, where I said Hora Lord will become the ruler of the year, for that you have to use the normal Hora, sunrise based Hora. So never look at this Mahakala Hora for that purpose. So if you look at Hora Lord, it is Jupiter. So looking at what houses Jupiter owns and what houses he is placed in and how strong he is, whether he is good in the chart or bad in the chart, based on that, you will say what is the main theme of the year, what are the main events of the year. So who will tell me what houses Jupiter owns? Ramakrishna, you?
8 and 12.
For me? Why 8 and 12? So first look at ascendant, okay? AS is in Sagittarius. Who owns that sign? Jupiter. Jupiter owns these two signs, right? So in case you are confused when you are learning, you can take help from the software. You can say highlight Rasis owned by this planet. Then you will see Jupiter owns these two signs. You will see them in green. So these are the signs owned by Jupiter. So if you count from ascendant, this is first, second, third, fourth. So Jupiter owns the first house of the very essence of somebody's being, and then fourth house, and basically health, and then fourth house is, what is the fourth house? At that time I was 17 years of age and I was taking important examinations in my life. I would either become an engineer or doctor or something else, or an economist. It would be decided during that time, that year. So because I am still learning, the fourth house can show education. So Jupiter is the fourth lord in fourth house. So is he well placed? He is well placed in the fourth house. So can there be an important event in the year relating to learning, relating to education? Absolutely. And then, is there a Raj Yoga between Sun and Jupiter? Who will tell me? You tell me. Is there a Raj Yoga between Sun and Jupiter? Jupiter, does he own quadrants?
Yeah.
Yes. First and fourth, both are quadrants. Jupiter owns quadrants. And trines. Friend's place, okay, but does he own a trine? The trines are first, fifth and ninth. The ninth house of Leo is owned by Sun. So Sun is a trine lord. If a quadrant lord and a trine lord are together in one sign, is that a Raj Yoga? Yes. Quadrant lords are representations of Vishnu, that is the effort. And trine lords are representations of Lakshmi, that is the blessings, fruits of effort. So when quadrant lord and trine lord are together, that is like Lakshmi and Narayana coming together, which means great blessings. The effort and the fruits have a link. So your efforts will basically get fruits during that time. So that is a Raj Yoga. So quadrant lord and trine lord being together in any sign, or even aspecting each other, being in first and seventh from each other and aspecting each other, is a Raj Yoga. So there is a Raj Yoga. And whenever you see a Raj Yoga in Rashi chart, one thing you have to see is how strong it is, how close the planets are. Are the planets close to each other or far away? So if you look at the longitude, Jupiter is at, where is Jupiter? 12 degrees, 20 minutes in Pisces. If you look at Sun, he is at 12 degrees, 54 minutes. They are within half degree from each other. So, because those are good friends. Another thing, if a Raj Yoga is given by enemies, two planets who are enemies of each other, that is not so auspicious. But here, Sun and Jupiter are good friends. They are friends. And they are giving a great Raj Yoga. They are very close to each other. So it's like, even if I and Palani are friends, if I am in this corner and if he is in that corner, and if we both have to work together to execute a project, let us say, if we are in two corners of the room, maybe the project will not get done today because we probably won't talk to each other. But if we are sitting in the middle of the house, close to each other, maybe the project will come up. We'll talk and we'll finalize the project. So it is akin to that. If two planets are too close to each other, they will give the result that they are supposed to give, especially in the case of a yoga. So here you can see that the fourth house and ninth house, education and fortune, or even foreign journey, going to a faraway place. That's what the ninth house can show. So you can see that the Raj Yoga is given by, it can be given by Jupiter or Sun, but Raj Yoga will basically be given. And if you look at the dashas, if you look at the Tithi Ashtotri dasha, when is Sandasha starting? 87 May 27 to June 14. The results of my higher secondary examination came on May 28 evening. They came in radio news at 7 o'clock, around 7 o'clock on May 28. It was announced who were the toppers in the examination. So it was May 28th, as soon as Sandasha started. And then on June 1st or 3rd, I think June 1st, IIT entrance examination results came. So there also I was successful. So Sun basically gave me that fortune, because he is the 9th lord and he is with the 4th lord. He gave Jupiter's results because they are together. The result of the yoga can be given by either Jupiter or Sun. There are other principles based on Shadbala, based on who is more advanced. You will be actually able to say whether the Sun will give the results or Jupiter, but let us not go to that depth. Bottom line is Sun and Jupiter will give good results. And if somebody with this chart comes to you and asks you, I wrote an important entrance examination for engineering, will I be selected? The results are supposed to come around June 1st. Will I be selected or not? You can directly look at Sandasha and see that Sun is involved in a Rajyoga with the Hora Lord, with the ruler of the year. That too relating to the education. And another thing, it's not only relating to education. Look at where they are placed. What is the Arudha where they are placed? Sun and Jupiter are in Arudha Lagna. Arudha Lagna is, what is Arudha Lagna? My image. So it may not be that I am really a smart person, but suddenly because I stood state first, and that too with a total that was a record of the decade in the state, many people in my town, they will think, oh, he's a smart person. People who didn't know me until then, suddenly they knew me. People in my town, they suddenly knew me. They knew that so and so PVR Narasimha Rao is a smart person. He's from our town. He stood state first with a record score. So suddenly my image was boosted. So the two planets giving their Rajyoga placed in Arudha Lagna shows that whatever good results they give, it's not just learning. Had Arudha Lagna not been there, this could be just learning lot of good things. Maybe I would find a good guru, and maybe I would learn lot of things during that year. That is also possible if you see 4th and 9th lords together. But there is Arudha Lagna there. So it's not just a good event relating to learning, but it's a it's a perceived image booster. It's an image booster because the planets are in Arudha Lagna. The two planets are in Arudha Lagna. And because the sign involved is 4th house, the boosting of the image comes relating to learning. And just out of curiosity, so even based on Rashi chart, when you are looking at Tithi Pravesh chart, TP chart, just based on the Rashi chart, you may be able to make good predictions even without going to divisional charts. But if you go to divisional charts, they will be confirmed even more. And by the way, before I forget, I just want to mention this. Pandit Sanjay Rath, my guru who is from Puri, he will be coming here to Boston sometime this week, this Thursday, and he'll be staying here for a week. Right now, I think there is a conference going on in London. He finished the conferences in Singapore, Serbia and London, and he's coming to Boston. There is no conference right now, but there is a conference on September 16, 17, 18 and 19, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And we haven't set any fee, even though all other SJC conferences are based on fixed fees. Sanjay ji agreed to having a flexible structure here, just like the last time. So we'll be taking voluntary donations for the event. We have to pay rent for the facility. So if any of you want to contribute, that will be appreciated, but it's not compulsory. And also, if you are interested in visiting, in attending the conference, send me a mail and register. Try to register as early as possible. And if you can't come all the 4 days because you have work, you can register just for a couple of days or just for a session. So I sent you a mail, so you can respond to that mail and register for that. And second thing is, so Sanjay ji will be here for a week. From August 21st or 22nd, there is a conference in California, and before dashing off to San Jose, he will be spending a week here. So for next weekend, he will be in Boston, and he expressed an interest in coming to this class. So next Sunday, most likely, unless he doesn't feel like driving so long, because this is 50 miles and he hates driving, he hates long drives. So unless he feels lazy in the morning and says, no, I won't come, most probably he will come for the next class and he will address the class. So there will be a small class addressed by Pandit Sanjay Rath next Sunday. So those of you who are not here today and listening to the audio, try to make it to the next class. Okay, let us continue now. So if you look at, why am I looking at Saptamsa? Yeah. Let us see D24. Now, Out of the two planets who are associated in the Raj Yoga, Sun and Jupiter, where is Sun? Which house is he in? He is in the third house from Lagna. Is it good or bad for a malefic planet? Good. For Sun, Saturn and Mars, even Rahu and Ketu. The third, sixth and 11th houses are really good. And what house does he own? Sixth house of, what does the sixth house stand for? Overcoming obstacles or beating the competition. So the sixth lord Sun is in the third house. So Sun definitely shows success and happiness. And moreover, that is from Lagna, from the point of view of truth. But from the point of view of what the world thinks of me, what does Sun show? Now look at Arudha Lagna. If you look from Arudha Lagna, where is Sun? He is in Arudha Lagna itself. So the image that was boosted by Sun and Jupiter was relating to learning, because in D24 it could be relating to something else also. If you look at all divisional charts, if you see Sun in Arudha Lagna in another divisional chart, it may be relating to that chart, but here it is relating to D24. In D24, for example, let's say D20. If you look at D20, Sun is basically not in Arudha Lagna or anything. Sun is not really well placed also in this chart. So the image is not relating to any spiritual activities. The image is relating to learning, education. So that is what you can see. And also, not only Arudha Lagna, is there any other Arudha along with Sun? There is A5. What does A5 stand for? I said it earlier. Fifth house is your abilities. What is A5? Manifestation of your abilities. So that is like the awards you get, the prizes you get, the mementos you get, and even state first or selection, a particular rank in IIT examination, IIT entrance examination, or standing state first in your state. Those are also tangible things. If you say, if somebody says, oh, PVR is a smart person, it doesn't mean anything. He thinks I am smart. I may or may not be smart. If I say I am not really smart, I am an average person, it doesn't really mean anything. These are all imperceptible things, being smart or not. But standing first in a state, in a particular examination, in higher secondary examination, that is a tangible thing. So Arudhas always show tangible things. So the announcement on radio that I stood state first, that can be my A5. So because Sun is in Arudha Lagna and in A5, during Sun Dasha, it was not Jupiter Dasha. It was not here that I came state first. It was not here that there was some tangible achievement, tangible manifestation of my abilities in learning. It did not happen during this time, but it happened during Sun Dasha. Okay?
Does this
Actually,
result will be happening at the beginning of Dasha or middle of Dasha or end of Dasha? How do we...
okay, so you are not happy with just, what is the length of the period? What is the length of the period here, Antardashas? What is the length of this period?
1 month. Yeah.
1 month? 19 days.
19 days.
So I have told you a principle, a technique to see what happens during the year and also time it within 19 days. And you are not happy. We'll go back to Vimshatri Dasha and we'll figure out, I'll tell you two or 3 year period and you figure out from there.
Can we apply the Sishodaya and Pushodaya logic here?
I haven't really found it very successful. Yes, in general in Vimshatri Dasha, to see whether results of a Dasha are felt more in the beginning or the middle or the end, there are principles. When I do Vimshatri Dasha in detail, I will do them. There are principles based on the nature of the planet, based on the nature of the sign, etc. They don't work always, but they work 80% or 70% of the time. So I'll go through those principles later. But when it comes to Tithi Ashtotri Dasha, I don't really know of any principles that tell you how to time the beginning or middle or end of the Dasha. But like he said, like that said, you can look at the Antardashas. So if you look at but the thing is, it's not really very easy to judge the Antardashas. Judging up to Dashas is easy, but judging Antardashas is more involved. It needs more theory. So I will not do that now. But you should be happy with timing something up to 19 days. Okay? Now, let me give you an exercise. Let me see if anybody guesses. Those of you who already know the answer, please keep quiet. I am making a chart for 1994. This is a chart for 1994. Why is Jupiter? Oh, I haven't. underneath. Is there a bug? Okay. Okay, I think the timer, there was a timer I was using. Yeah, when you click on that again, all those highlighting will go away. I think the timer expired or something. I had to look at that. Okay. So if you look at this 1994 chart, what I will tell you is on November 9, 1994 or November 10, there was an important event. On November 9, 1994, there was an important event in my life. And what is the nature of the event? I want to see if somebody can guess it at least. For those who are listening to the audio, I will give the data. The annual chart is for the data of April 9, 1994, 446.56, and the same, by the way, longitude and latitude. Irrespective of where a person is living, when the birthday comes in a particular year, you make the chart only for the longitude and latitude of birth. I was born in Machilipatnam, India. So even though I am living here, if you want to see what happens during this year, when my birthday comes, you make a chart for India. You don't relocate the chart. So that is an important principle. So anyway, during that year, I was in India itself. Yeah, this is really, one second, just give me a second. That highlighting doesn't want to go away. Okay, now it went away. Okay. So, first thing is, okay, let us forget the horror alert. Horror alert will say so many things that will happen during the year, but during that particular period there was an important event. So, what is the event relating to? What are the signs owned by Saturn?
Can you go to PVR?
Yeah, I told you it's Saturn Dasha. So, Saturn Dasha started on 1994 November 5 and it was till December 7. So, during that time an important event happened. What are the signs Saturn owns? Capricorn and Aquarius, those are 11th and 12th houses. And which house is he in? So, 12th Lord in 12th house. Is he strong or weak? Is it a good event or bad event? It's a good event because Saturn is in own sign, own house. 12th Lord in 12th house is a good placement. So, it is relating to 12th house. What can 12th house show? What are good events relating to 12th house? Spiritual, yeah. What else?
Giving, expenditure.
Yeah. Okay, now let's say spirituality. So somebody said Saturn, 12th Lord Saturn in 12th can show spiritual progress. Look at D20. If you look at Lagna, Saturn is the Lord of 5th house of devotion and 6th house of overcoming obstacles. And where is he placed? He is placed in Lagna in Manakarka Sthana. So it's not really a great time for spirituality. Right? Do you understand that? So it's not really, Saturn in Lagna is Manakarka Sthana for Saturn. So because the 5th and 6th Lord is in Lagna, the devotion and overcoming obstacles relating to spiritual pursuit suffered during Saturn Dasha. So actually that period was not so good for spirituality.
Giving up something.
Pardon me?
Giving up something.
Yeah. Saturn in 12th can show giving up something. Okay, I will,
D9.
pardon me, D9, okay. Pardon me? I got married. 12th house, why will 12th house show marriage? Upavada will show marriage. 12th house is basically giving up something. But because 12th Lord is in 12th house, it will be something good.
Some donation, something related to family, peace.
Pardon me?
A2 is there with that.
Yeah. Okay. Can 12th house also show displacement from motherland? Yeah. For those of you who don't know that, 9th and 12th houses are the houses of foreign travel. If you are traveling to a country that is more prosperous than your country, then that is shown by 9th house. 9th house is the house of prosperity. So 9th house can show going abroad, and 12th house in general shows leaving your motherland. So of course that's not the only signification. It can also show giving up something, giving a big donation. It can also show, like you said, being very spiritual during that time. That is certainly a possibility. But I verified it looking at D20. It was not the case. So 12th house can also show going abroad. And if you also want to see who is the other 12th lord, there are two 12th lords. One is Saturn, other is Rahu. So one 12th lord Saturn is in 12th house itself. The other 12th lord Rahu is in 9th house. That way a watery sign. Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces are watery signs. If the 9th house is a watery sign and if Rahu is there, by the way, Rahu is the natural significator of foreign cultures and being exposed to foreign cultures. So the Rahu being the 12th lord of displacement and being in the 9th house of going abroad in a watery sign, and the planet himself being Rahu, there is a very good chance of going abroad. And for those of you who want to go deeper, there are so-called sahamas. These are, punya means, see I gave the meanings also here, so you can look at the meanings. Some people call them sahams. Actual Sanskritam word is sahamam. The word is punya sahamam, vidya sahamam. That is the word used by Nilakantha in Tajaka Nilakanthi. So sahamam is the word, and Sanskrit words have a m at the end. So if you remove it, for example, bhavam means house. Instead of saying bhavam, we just say bhava. So similarly, instead of saying we just say graha, we just say bhava. Like that, we just remove the m at the end, which is basically a vibhakti pratyayam. You just remove it. So the word is bhava. Similarly, the word is sahama. So I call it sahama. But what some people do is, especially in North India, because of the Arabic influence, the I at the end of the name is removed. For example, instead of saying Shiva, you say Shiv. Instead of saying Rama, they say Ram. Instead of saying Krishna, they say Krishna. Like that, Narayana, they say Narayan. So even though the Sanskrit words end with A, because of the Arabic influence, in Arabic, all the words end with a consonant. So because of that influence, people make them Ram, Shiv, Narayan, etc. Similarly, Bhava became Bhav, Navamsha became Navamsh, Siddhamsha became Siddhamsh, and Sahama became Saham. So people call them Saham, but the actual word is Sahamam. So I call it Sahama. So what you can do is, these are the significant points of the zodiac for various activities in life. So those of you who know Arabic astrology will know that there is a Pata fortune or something. Pasta fortune. I forgot the actual name, but there is a thing known as Pata fortune. That is basically like Punya Sahamam here. So there are some of these sahamas given in Arabic astrology also. If you look at the astrology from the Persian region, they have some of these concepts. Not all the sahamas given by Nilakantha, but some of them can be found. So there are, if you want to see when or whether somebody will go abroad, there are two sahamas that are very important. So one is Paradesha Sahama. Paradesha Sahama. Paradesha means para means other people, desha means country. So Paradesha means other people's country, which means abroad. So Paradesha Sahama that is an important sensitive point of the zodiac relating to going abroad or being abroad or interacting with foreigners. And similarly, Jala Patana. Jala means water, Patana means falling. Jalapatana means crossing ocean, falling over the ocean, crossing ocean. So Jalapatana Sahama is for a long journey. It doesn't really have to be abroad. It can be within the same country also. But if you cross a lot of water, then you should see this particular Sahama. So Jalapatana Sahama is a sensitive point in the zodiac for crossing ocean or going to a different continent or going to a different country. So if you look here, where was Rahu? Oops. Where was Rahu? Can somebody see where is Rahu? Scorpio, right? But how many degrees, how many minutes? 2 degrees 7 minutes in Scorpio. So that is where Rahu is. Now look at the Sahamas. Where is Jalapatana Sahama? 2 degrees 18 minutes. So Rahu is not only the 12th lord, not only the Karaka for going abroad, not only in the 9th house, not only in watery sign, but he is within 11 arc minutes from Jalapatana Sahamam. So without any doubt, if you see this, without any doubt you can say this person will go abroad during this year. And the result can be given by either Rahu or Saturn. Both of them can give the result. So I don't have a strong reason for saying why it happened in Saturn Dasha rather than Rahu Dasha. It could have as well happened in Rahu Dasha. So I don't, unless I do more analysis, which I may or may not be able to do. I'm not even sure if I can give you a satisfactory answer, but actually it was on November 10 that I went. It was Saturn Rahu Antardasha. Yes.
You ever progress those sahims at a certain rate of progression?
Pardon me?
Progress the sahims
Saham, yeah.
at a certain rate of progression.
Yeah.
And then at that progressive rate, you can know what is happening.
Right, that is the technique that some people use. But what I am doing is I am finding the Sahamam for the Sahama for every year. So instead of progressing the natal, the sensitive points given in the natal chart, what I am doing is I am actually finding the chart for every year. This is like a progress chart for the year. So I am not progressing the Sahama. Oh, what you are saying is
Yes, progress the sahim
from the 7
Yes, yes.
and when it reaches 18.
Yes.
That is a good point for research. Yes, you can try to do research based on where Rahu is, based on where the Sahama is. What he's saying is maybe if you progress it, maybe during that 1 year, if you progress it during that 1 year, you can find out how many days from the beginning of the year are there for this event to happen. So there are techniques like this, but it doesn't look like it works in this case. But there are certainly techniques like this.
You can progress it from the year and also from the lunar too. You can progress it
Right,
over time.
right.
And get it.
Right. So maybe there is some scope for research there. So that's a good area for research. Good, very good. So it was actually during Saturn Rahu. I started November 9 night. So November 9 night I was in Chennai. November 10 early morning, like 2 o'clock or so, I took the flight. So that was still in Saturn Jupiter. That's when I started traveling. But by the time I landed abroad, that was November 10, and the time was around 3 o'clock in the 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon. So that was well after Saturn Rahu started. So I went abroad, I landed in a foreign country after Saturn Dasha, Rahu Antardasha started. So that you can see clear link between Saturn and Rahu have with going abroad. Now the thing is, if you want to see this from my Vimshottari Dasha, you will be able to see it, but it will not make as perfect sense. You have to basically use your intuition to a larger extent. Even here you have to use your intuition. For example, 12th house, it can show giving things away, not just giving up your residence in motherland. It can show giving away $1 million. Of course, I don't have $1 million, but it can also show being spiritual. There are so many possibilities. So there are rules for eliminating some of those possibilities, but they are not perfect. So even here you have to use your intuition, but as the technique becomes more and more sophisticated, the role of your intuition becomes smaller and smaller, and that is what I like about this. I don't have to think too much, and I don't have to believe in my intuition. Actually, when I pray to gods, I always pray that when I make predictions, if it's not based on solid principle, I pray to God that my prediction should go wrong, so that I have feedback to improve my knowledge. Otherwise, if my intuition is making whatever I say come true, my goal in life is not to make good predictions. Of course, that is a side goal, but the main goal is to find the real science in astrology. So I like principles that do not exercise a lot of my intuition, but exercise more of the theory, which are based on solid and replicable principles. For example, if you go to astrologers who are successful, you take the same chart today and take the same chart after 1 year, they may give totally different readings. And you take the same chart to 2 different astrologers, they may give totally different readings, but they may be 95% successful. So lot of astrologers are successful based on intuition, but if you want replicable techniques that can be one day proven as science, then you have to look at techniques like this. And Tithi Pravesha is a really, as you can see how beautifully things are working out. It's a really beautiful technique. Yes?
D4 should show something about it, right?
Yeah, that is why I open the chart. Yes. D5 should show something. Yeah. So if you look at D4, again the same Lagna is rising. So Saturn is Saturn and Rahu are again the 12th lords, and Rahu is in the 9th house, and Saturn is in the 3rd house of travel and having Argala as well as Grahadrishti on his own sign. If you look at the 12th house of displacement from your motherland, Saturn has 10th aspect, Grahadrishti. So Grahadrishti means desire. And also he has Argala. So Saturn has Argala on 12th house. So he wants to give displacement during that year. And the main thing that he is allowed to give is travel, because he is in the 3rd house. Being in the 3rd house of travel, he will definitely give travel during the year. And that travel, because of the Argala, the travel will be for going abroad, displacement from the motherland. So that is what the 12th house Argala and Grahadrishti show. And I said earlier, when a planet has Rashi Drishti, it is a permanent influence. If it has Grahadrishti, it is a desire. It may or may not happen. If it has Argala, it must happen. But it will happen during a particular time. And I said, to see when the Grahadrishti and Argala fructify, you have to look at the relationship between the planet, the house lord and the Karaka. So Saturn is in Taurus, under Venusian command. He is in Venus sign. His dispository is Venus. So Venus has command over Saturn. But Venus and Saturn are friends. They are friends. So being a friend, basically like your manager, your boss is your friend. So he will cooperate. And the second thing is the Karaka of this house. He is in the 12th house of going abroad. So the Karaka, the planet who is the project manager for the project of taking me abroad, that project manager also should like Saturn. Then he will put him on the project. So if you see the Karaka for going abroad is 12th house is Saturn, but for the particular thing of going abroad it is Rahu. Again, Rahu and Saturn are close buddies. They are good friends. So Saturn is in a friend sign, and he is the house where he has Grahadrishti and Argala. The Karaka for that particular matter is a good friend. So he will say, when Saturn says, hey, I want to take this person abroad, the project, so let's say taking abroad is a project. His manager, his group manager will say, okay, I like you, do whatever you want. I have belief in you. And then Rahu, the project manager, will say, oh, you want to work on this project? Okay, good. I also like you. You are a good person. You are my friend. Come and work on the project. So Rahu and Venus will cooperate with Saturn. So Saturn will basically end up giving that particular result during that year. So it happened in Saturn Rahu Antardasha. It could have happened in Saturn Venus Antardasha also, because Venus is the boss. But it happened in Saturn Rahu Antardasha. Yes.
Returning back also you will see the same significatives, or it will be
Returning back?
to motherland.
Yes.
Crossing the ocean will be applicable, but then
If crossing the ocean will not be applicable. Jalpadana Sahama will not be applicable. But basically a planet who is not associated with the 9th house and 12th house. If a planet basically, let's say the 8th lord of breaking things, let us say he is aspecting the 12th house or he is aspecting the 9th house, then that planet will break this residence in a foreign country. So if I have an example, if you have an example like that, we'll see that example.
I have decided to go back.
Oh, let's not look at decisions. Let's look at, because that will corrupt the knowledge. Because we don't know if you are really going back. I have people who really went back, so I can bring those charts and we can look at those charts. Then you know for sure. Yes. And I want to say this is an important point. When you are experimenting, when you are understanding the science, always look at concrete examples. If you think that something is going to happen, don't look at that, because then you will end up, it's a circular logic. You will end up justifying what you want to do, and you will end up using what you want to do to justify some principle that it may be half-baked principle. So always when you are evaluating principles, use concrete examples where you know for sure what happened. Yes, Kiran?
This will be a digression, but I'm very
Then why?
to apply.
Okay.
With regard to travel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were supposed to travel from Bangalore to Boston on north side.
Yeah.
But we went to the airport and we came back, but we traveled the following day. So can we?
It's just a day, so I don't think I will have visibility into it in annual Tithi chart. But let's just look at it. There are, along with the annual charts that I mentioned, there are monthly charts as well as daily charts. So if you are looking at that particular daily chart, there may be indication, and I don't want to do it in this class. Maybe after the class I can do. Actually, yeah, let's leave that example. Because it's not, what annual chart shows is what stands out during that year. So from the point of view of that year, me going abroad, or me standing straight first, or somebody getting married, or somebody starting divorce proceedings. Those are important events from the point of view of that year. But if you got delayed, your flight got delayed by 1 day, it's not really such an important event. It may not even be visible. But if you are looking at the day's chart, the daily chart, then it will be really an important event. For that year, for that particular day, the flight getting delayed and your plans getting spoiled, that's such an important event. That is your whole life during that day. So in the daily chart, it will very clearly show up. But in the annual chart, it may not even show up. Yes.
This daily Varapala, that they give sign,
That is different.
There is nothing to do.
No. Those results are based on your moon sign or sun sign.
Okay.
So those are only approximate.
Okay.
They don't really always work. If you look at those zodiac sign results given in the Western magazines, it's usually based on sun sign. In Indian magazines, it's usually based on the moon sign, the sidereal zodiac and moon sign. So whichever readings you take, they work sometimes, they don't work sometimes. And some people tell me that, oh, my sun sign results always perfectly work for me. What I tell them is, change your sun sign. Take the one that is opposite, whatever it is. If it's Taurus, take Scorpio or Sagittarius. Take some random thing and start following those results. And you will start to feel that even they make sense. Because those are usually so vague, they are not so specific. And those are, you can't say that this world is full of just 12 kind of people. People have just 12 kinds of fortunes. It's just ridiculous. When I went abroad, for example, so many people who were born in the same sun sign and moon sign, they were probably doing something else. So that's not science. That is basically surah. That is just approximate fun, basically entertainment. If you ask me, I'm sorry if I hurt anybody, but that's my genuine, honest feeling. And if you don't believe me, just change if you follow sun sign or moon sign, change your sign and start looking at the results in the same magazine, which you always do. Even with a changed sun sign or moon sign, they will start making sense to you. You will start feeling like, yeah, it's working. Yes. Because they are designed to make you feel so. Yes.
Our marriage was actually fixed on October, got delayed to February.
Yeah.
Is it due to something?
Okay, let us see. Is the chart somewhere? It's your computer, so it must be there. Have you looked at it recently? Where is Maitri? Okay, this one? Yeah, D9 is the chart of marriage, Navamsha. That is the chart of marriage. Okay, so when were you supposed to get married and when did you get married?
October 19th we were supposed to get married.
October 19 of which year?
2010.
Okay, last year. Okay, October 19. October 19, okay. And when did you get married?
February 1st, 2010.
October 19, and it got delayed to February 1st because this guy had some project or something busy here. Okay. Okay. February 1st. Okay. First, let us see. She was supposed to get married on October 19, but she got married on February 1st. Okay. Now, let us see the basic Vimshatri Dasha, because we are not even sure if this Navamsha is right. So, she got married in Venus Dasha. Which Antar Dasha? Oops, sorry. She got married in Sun Dasha. And she was supposed to get married in Moon Antar Dasha, but it ended up happening in Mars Antar Dasha, or maybe Rahu. No, actually Mars. Okay. But October 19 could actually be wrong. This November 6th date could be wrong by a few days, and it could actually be Mars. So we don't know that for sure. Okay. Now, let us see the Navamsha chart. Okay. First, can Sun give marriage or not? Where is Sun? In Navamsha is the chart of marriage. And where is Sun in Navamsha? Sun is in the 12th house, but in own sign, giving Vimala Yoga, the yoga that ensures purity of purpose. Okay. So there is some chance. Even though he is in a Dusthana, he is a well-placed planet in this particular chart. And also, he has Argala on Venus. Venus is the Karaka. Right? Venus is the Karaka for marriage. So, 7th house is the house, but I am just looking at the Karaka now. So from the Karaka of marriage, Sun has Argala. A malefic planet in the third house has Argala. So there is some chance, but it doesn't look very strong. Before we go further, always it's a good idea to see how wrong it can go. It can be off by either 9 minutes 12 seconds back. If the time is 9 minutes 12 seconds back, then Lagna will be previous sign. If the time is 4 minutes 23 seconds forward, then Lagna is the next sign. So if the time given is wrong, what is the time given? Say 5 multiple. So maybe it could be wrong. So is this a noted time or is this rectified time by somebody like Kiran? This is noted time. So by the way, for those who are listening to the MP3, the data is March 18, 1981, 5:25 p.m. The time zone is 5:30 east of GMT. The longitude is 77 east 35. The latitude is 12 north 59. Okay. So 9-minute error is usually unlikely. Is it reasonably accurate? Did somebody note down or approximate? Approximate. So it could be wrong by even 10 minutes.
10 minutes, 4 minutes.
Can it be wrong by 10 minutes or you think absolutely not?
No.
Okay. So she says that the time cannot be really wrong by 10 or 15 minutes, but it can be wrong by 5 minutes. So based on that, Lagna going from here to here, from Virgo to Leo is not really likely, but Lagna going from Leo to Libra is likely, because we saw that if it's 4.5 minutes forward, that the sign will change to the next sign. So Lagna is either Virgo or Libra. Now let us keep that in mind. Let us leave it there. And now let us look at the Antardasha that gave marriage. Which Antardasha gave marriage? Mars Antardasha. Mars Antardasha gave marriage. What are the signs Mars owns? 3rd and 8th. He is in the first house. He owns 3rd and 8th, and he is in the first house Virgo. So do you think that can give marriage? Marriage is shown by Upvada and 7th house. Excuse me. He is not associated with either. So do you think Mars could have actually given marriage if this is right? Unlikely, right? On the other hand, if we move this guy, okay, let us say we move this guy to the next sign. Change the birth time so that Lagna in this divisional chart moves to the next sign. That is what the menu says. So if you do that, so what I did was from 5:25 I changed the time to 5:29 it changes just by barely what is needed. That's what the software does. So it's basically around 5:29:30. So now what houses does Mars own? He owns second house of family, resources in following dharma. The second house is very important for marriage, because second house normally we say is the house of family, but in the chart of dharma, this is the resources you need for dharma. So you need the family infrastructure, the marital relationship. That is the resource you need for your following your dharma, for adhering to your dharma. So second house is very important. Mars owns the second house, and he also owns the 7th house. So because of that, even though he is placed in the 12th house, Mars is basically a very important planet for giving marriage. So Mars Antardasha is certainly capable of giving marriage, right? So that is point number 1. Second, where is Upvada? Because Upvada is the actual thing that gives marriage. Upvada is the actual marriage. The marriage day, the wedding day ceremony is Upvada. Does Mars have any influence on Upvada? Mars has Rashi Drishti, Graha Drishti, and no Argala actually. Mars is Rashi Drishti and Graha Drishti on Upvada. So because of that influence, Mars is not only the planet who brings a new relationship into life, but he can give a marriage ceremony, right? So Upvada is basically the actual formal marriage, formal wedding. So Mars is capable of giving marriage. Now what about Sun? When you are looking at Antardasha, you have to look at the Arudha, and you have to look at, when you are looking at Mahadasha, I said Arudha is not that important, but look at the house owned and occupied. Yes?
You said you don't have Argala, but 2, 4 and 11 house
Yeah,
planet.
but Mars is not in the 4th house from Upada, he is in the 10th house,
Oh,
right? He doesn't have Argala. Okay, now if you look at Sun, now he is in Kama Trikona. Sun is in the 11th house. This is the 3rd house, 3rd house, 7th house and 11th house. Those 3 houses are called Kama Trikona. So 11th house is the final gains. This is the gains relating to dharma. And he has Rashi Drishti on the 7th house. So because of this, now Sun is actually, Sandasha, he is capable of giving marriage. And Mars Antardasha definitely makes sense. Right? Who are the other planets associated with the 2nd and 7th houses? Or let's consider it on the 7th house. Who are the other planets associated with the 7th house? Jupiter. He owns Upada and he is in the 7th house. So Jupiter could have given marriage, but unfortunately he owns the 6th house. He is a malefic planet for Libra Lagna. He owns 3rd and 6th houses. And as a matter of fact, 6th Lord being in the 7th house is bad for marriage. So Jupiter is not likely to give marriage, but he is likely to give some quarrels. So when Jupiter Antardasha comes, you guys have to be next year, be a little careful. And Jupiter, because he is Putrakaraka, the nature is children, there may be some quarrels between you two relating to children. Maybe you will be pregnant or maybe you will deliver, and because of the stress, the relation will be slightly spoiled. That is a possibility during the next year. But during 2005, you guys have to be a little bit careful because 6th Lord is in the 7th house. So there can be some quarrels in the relationship. So Jupiter is not likely to give marriage. And who else have an influence on this? Does anybody have Graha Drishti on this? Well, only Mars. Mars is not only the Lord, but he has the 8th aspect. Mars has 4th and 8th aspect. So Mars has Graha Drishti, complete, 100%. 8 is 100% Drishti for Mars. 100% Graha Drishti on the 7th house. But we already covered Mars. Let's see anybody else. Who else has influence? Now look at Argalas. Who have Argala on this? Sun is strong in his own sign and he has 5th house Argala, the special Argala. So Sun has Argala and who else? Ketu and Shani. Ketu and Shani have Argala. So they are actually positive. Apart from Mars, Saturn and Ketu have a chance of giving marriage. But the problem with them is, the problem with Saturn and Ketu is their Antardashas are coming much later than Mars Antardasha. And moreover, if you look at Sun, they don't have a good relationship with Sun. If Sun is the one who is giving marriage, the Antardasha of Saturn and Ketu is not likely to give good results because Sun doesn't like them. Even though for the process of getting married, Venus is the project manager, Sun is like, because it is his dasha in which these results are being given, temporarily Sun is like a temporary project manager, a project lead you may say. So even though for the process of getting married, if you look at it as a project using our old analogy, Venus is the project manager, Sun is the project lead, because right now for this particular project during these 6 years, Sun is the one who is in charge. So because they don't have a good relationship with Sun, they are actually not so likely to give the result. So Mars ends up the default planet. And if you were making a prediction, if you did not know that she got married and you were making a prediction, and let us say Mars Dasha was over, then you would pick Saturn and Ketu Antardashas. Pardon me? Yes, go ahead. No problem. So, if you were making a prediction, if you knew that Mars did not give the result, suppose this person comes to you in 2005 and asks you, when will I get married? Then what you can say is Saturn and Ketu will probably give the result. And probably Saturn, because more than Ketu, Saturn is Yogakaraka. So you would probably guess Saturn. So that is how you would time the Antardasha. Now, let us go to the Tithi because that was her purpose in asking. So based on the dashas, we have rectified the Navamsa Lagna. We are reasonably confident that Libra is right and Virgo is wrong. So the birth time was not 5:25, but it was 5:29:30 or the next 14 minutes, next 13 or 14 minutes. We don't exactly know. Within that period, it could be, we may have to even move it, we may have to move it further by another couple of minutes. We don't really know. So we have to look at let us look at Tithi Pravesha. Which year?
2003.
Actually, let me look when 2004 New Year started. April 3. Okay, good. Because if it was before February 1st, it isn't, but then I will have to look at 2 years. Okay. So 1 year will do now. So if you look at 2003-2004 annual Tithi Pravesha chart, the data is March 16, 2003, 9:35:28 p.m. Same time zone and longitude and latitude as birth. So if you make this annual Tithi Pravesha chart for 2003, first thing is, who is the Hora Lord? The Hora Lord is Venus. Okay, let us leave it there. Venus is the Hora Lord. And secondly, in Navamsha, how much certainty we have? Now, if the time goes back by 4 minutes 23 seconds, the Lagna will change. If it goes forward by 9 minutes 47 seconds, that Lagna will change again. So, it is most likely that we are stuck with this Lagna. The Lagna is unlikely to be wrong, unlikely to give any further rectification. Now, who is the Hora Lord? Venus. Okay. He is the ruler of the year. That is one thing. And second thing, there is another thing. There are 5 things called Pancha Angas, 5 limbs of time. Pancha means 5, Anga means limb. Panchanga means 5 limbs of the time. So there are 5 ways in which you can measure the quality of time. So that will, those are Tithi, Yoga, Vara, Nakshatra and Karana. Tithi means lunar day. Yoga is basically a combination of sun and moon's longitudes. You can find it in any book, including my book, I think. And Vara is weekday. Yoga I already did. Nakshatra is moon's constellation. Karana is half lunar day. So these 5 limbs are symbolic of the 5 elements of this creation. The earth, water, fire. If you look at these 5 elements, there is a one-to-one correspondence between them. For example, Tithi shows watery element. And similarly, Yoga shows ethery element. It shows the Akasha Tattva. And for binding two people together, Yoga is very important. For binding of people, what is important? Yoga. Yoga is very important. And for overall happiness and relationships, etc., prosperity, etc., Tithi is important. And for achievements, Karana is important. If you are, for example, joining a job or getting an award if you are an actor and getting a Best Actor award, or if you are getting a promotion in your job, so those things are achievement, that is of earthy nature. So Karana is important. Karana is earthy nature. And prosperity and feeling good is watery nature. For that, Tithi is important. And Nakshatra is Vayu Tattva. It is air. So that is, air is basically, that is important for strength. And Vara is fire. It is the fire within us that keeps our bodies burning, the prana. So fire is important for physical vitality. So Vara, weekday lord, is important for physical vitality. So like this, in the Tithi Pravesha chart, not only the Hora Lord, he is the king of the year, but he has a cabinet. One planet responsible for relationships, one for achievements, one for physical vitality, and so on. So there, for joining somebody else, yoga is important. And you can see that when I say earth, when I say water, when I say fire, you can see all those things. But when I say akasha, ether, you can't see it. It is not, it doesn't have a form, but it fills everything. It fills everywhere. Akasha Tattva doesn't mean sky. Akasha literally means sky in Sanskrit. But Akasha Tattva doesn't mean sky. It means that which is binding everything. Without Akasha Tattva, everything just falls apart. All the water, all the earth, everything just breaks into pieces. So Akasha Tattva is what binds everything together. So yoga is what binds people together. So you have to look at the yoga. Yoga means being together actually. The literal meaning is being together, togetherness. So if you look at yoga, if you look at yoga lord, how he is placed? Is he placed in Lagna? Is he placed in a trine from Lagna? Is he placed in a Dusthana? Based on that, you see whether there will be a good event or bad event during that year. So if somebody is meeting an important person, or getting married to an important person, or a child is coming into your life, if an important person is coming into your life, yoga lord will be well placed. So if you look at Yoga Lord,
He is in Lagna.
he is in Lagna. If you look at Navamsha, see if you look at Rashi, Yoga Lord is badly placed. Yoga Lord Rahu is badly placed. But if you look at, so that means there may be some quarrels with people, some unpleasant relationships with people during that year. But if you look at Navamsha, he is in Lagna. Lagna shows a fresh start. If a planet is in Lagna, it is in a trine as well as quadrant. That is a very good placement. So during that time, that year, an important person may come into life. So marriage is a possibility based on yoga. And another important thing is, more than the placement with from Lagna, look at the placement from Hora Lord. Because Hora Lord is like the king of the year. So look where that planet is, and from there look where the Yoga Lord is, where Tithi Lord is, where Karna Lord is. That will give you good clues on how the year will be. What that means is, this particular planet is in the cabinet, planetary cabinet. If the king and a cabinet member have a good relation, then the cabinet member, whatever he wants, he can tell the king, hey king, I want to give him marriage. Can you please help me? The king will say, okay, no problem. So the good relationship is important. So if you look at Rahu, Rahu is in trines from Venus as well as, he is in trines from Venus here as well as here. In Rashi, from Venus in Capricorn, Rahu in Taurus is in a trine. In Navamsha, from Venus in Cancer, Rahu in Pisces is in a trine. So basically he is well placed. So Venus will cooperate with Rahu's efforts to give a good relationship or a new relationship and so on. Now, when was the marriage proposed, you said? October 19, 2003. Okay. So, so when you want to look at marriage, when you want to look at the husband, you look at the 7th house. When you want to look at yourself, you look at the Lagna. And when you want to look at marriage, you can look at the 1st house as well as 7th house. But actual marriage, it is connected with Upada Lagna. Upada shows the marriage, and also 9th house. 9th house is the house of Dharma. So if you are getting married, and basically it's a dharmic process, especially if your marriage was based on the rituals, the religious, the whatever tradition suggests. If you get married according to the traditional ways, the 9th house is an important house. So if a particular planet is associated with Upada or 9th house, it can give marriage during that time. On the other hand, if it is associated with the 7th house, there can be a relationship. Basically, you can meet that person. You may not get married, but you can meet that person. So here, let us look at the 9th house. Who are the planets associated with the 9th house? Jupiter is actually very well placed. He is the Lagna Lord. Jupiter is the Lagna Lord. He is in 9th house. And does he have aspect on Upada? Upada Lagna is here.
Yes.
Right? So, Jupiter has aspect Rashi Drishti on Upada Lagna. So, because Jupiter has Rashi Drishti on Upada Lagna, and he is in the 9th house of following Dharma, and because he is the Lagna Lord, Lagna Lord shows a new beginning in Dharma. And being in the 9th house, he shows a dharmic procedure in which a new beginning in dharmic life is started. New beginning is made. So Jupiter can give that result. And Mars, being the Lord of Upada Lagna in Aries, and having Rashi Drishti on it, and being also the 9th Lord, and having Graha Drishti on the 9th house, he has a desire. Mars has a desire to give this 9th house event. 9th house event being the dharmic procedure, the religious, the ritual of marriage. So Mars has the desire to give the religious ritual of marriage. But where is he placed? Mars is placed in the 6th house. So that is the problem. He is placed in the 6th house. So even though he wants to give the result, he may or may not be able to give the result. Mars may or may not be able to give the result.
Yes, 6th house is a good place for Mars because it's
yes, it is a very good place for Mars. So there will be obstacles, overcoming obstacles, and feeling good will be there. But for the purpose of getting married, the 7th, any planet in the 6th house will show quarrel. Actually, from the 7th house of marriage, the 6th house is nothing but the 12th house of loss. So it is the loss of meeting. 7th house is meeting. 6th house is loss of meeting. That is why it is said to be quarrels. You quarrel and you just move away. So that is why 6th house is a bad house. Especially 6th and 8th houses are bad. When you are talking about marriage, 7th house is a good house, 9th house is a good house, 1st house is a good house. But 6th and 8th houses are bad. 8th house shows unnecessary tensions and 6th house shows quarrels and basically breaking of the marriage. So, if you look at the dashas, it was this dasha. October 19 she was supposed to get married. So, she was supposed to get married in Mars dasha. So, there is indeed a chance for Mars to give marriage. So, during that time there was talk of marriage, but Mars being in the 6th house, he could not actually give the marriage. And finally, who ended up giving the marriage? Jupiter ended up giving the marriage. And the Antardasha happened to be Rahu, the planet who is in Lagna. The planets in Lagna, remember this, even though 7th house is marriage, Upada is marriage, never ignore Lagna, especially if the Lagna Lord or planet in Lagna is associated with Upada, is associated with 9th house, is associated with 7th house. If there is some association, Lagna is the seed, Lagna is your very existence. And especially in Navamsha, it is the beginning of dharmic life. When somebody is getting married, Lagna is very important. And here, Rahu being the Yoga Lord also made a difference. And that Rahu is in Lagna and Jupiter is Lagna Lord, aspecting Lagna in the 9th house. So she got married in Jupiter Rahu Antardasha. Okay. So does it answer your query, your question? Okay, good. So let us say, just out of curiosity, let us say, she came to you, she did not, but let us say, she came to you and asked you, when will I get a child? Will I get a child during this year? Suppose she asks you that. So what you can do for that is, look at 2004. So on April 3, 2004, the new year started. So if you look at that year, who is the Hora Lord? Hora Lord is Moon. Who is the Yoga Lord? Mercury. So Yoga Lord is Mercury, Hora Lord is Moon. Now let us remember that. Now let us first look at Saptamsha Rashi and then go to Saptamsha. Now, is Moon a good planet in this Saptamsha? Not really. Right? He is basically the 8th Lord, and even though he is with the 5th Lord Mars, he is also with Ketu, and moreover Moon is the 8th Lord. So this year, honestly, this year is not a great year for getting children. Right? Does it make sense to everybody? And I just want to illustrate one more thing. Sometime back I told you that, what is the house I told you for occult knowledge, like astrology? 8th house, right? What dasha was she running when she started learning astrology? She was running Venus dasha. She was running Venus dasha, right? From May 13, 2004 to 2004 July 22, she was running Venus dasha. And what are the houses? Where is Venus placed in Rashi chart? He is Lagna Lord and he is Ketu's dispositor. They basically look at this. Ketu is in Lagna. Second house of, I said 8th and 2nd houses are the house of astrology. 2nd house is basically making predictions. 8th house is the intuition and the occult understanding. So 2nd Lord Ketu, he is also a planet important for astrology. Jupiter and Ketu are important for astrology, especially pure astrological knowledge that comes from a tradition like ours. That will be seen by Jupiter and Ketu. So Ketu, the 2nd Lord coming to Lagna, will show spiritual interest and perhaps interest in astrology during the year. And Venus is the dispositor of all these guys, Lagna as well as Ketu. He owns them and he is in 8th house in own sign. So based on this, can you say that during this particular period there is a good chance, there is a very good chance of learning astrology, right? And now, whatever anybody wants to do, the king of the year has to grant it. If the king of the year is against something, it may not happen. So who is the king of the year? Was it Moon?
Yes.
Moon, are you sure?
Yes.
Yes, Moon. Hora Lord is Moon. So, because the planet is Moon, you see where Venus is with respect to Moon. From Moon, where is Venus? from the hora lord he is in a quadrant. So is that a good placement or bad placement? What did I say about quadrants? It's a good placement, but trines are things that come easily. Quadrants are things that come with effort. It's a good placement, but it shows effort. So Venus, the 8th lord in 8th house, who shows astrological knowledge during the year, he being in a quadrant from hora lord shows that the agenda Venus pushes forward of giving her some occult knowledge will be accepted by moon, the hora lord, because they have a good relationship. They are in quadrants from each other, and she will work hard towards that during this particular dasha. And if you want to be really sure, because 8th house is not just occult knowledge, it can show so many other things. So if you want to be really sure, you can look at the chart of learning D24, and Venus has to have some association with Ketu, Jupiter and 8th house, and it doesn't look like he does. So there could be some error in the chart. So I will not rectify it now, because this chart time changes much faster. See, 22 seconds it changes. So if you add 22 seconds, for example, actually before adding, let me just go to natal chart. I think I can add directly, but I am not sure. So let me make it 5:30. If I make it 5:30, that doesn't change our Navamsha. Whatever we have done so far remains valid. And now Lagna will be Pisces. The Lagna rising in her, the sign rising in the chart that shows her learning during this year, that has Pisces. So now Venus will be the 8th lord. So Venus being the 8th lord in Siddhamsha and being placed in a trine, that basically shows that during this year she will learn occult knowledge. And also Ketu is there. Ketu is really strong in one side. So until now, until this May 13, she did not really know much astrology. Only Kiran knew astrology, and she suddenly got interested along with Kiran, and she started learning astrology, and soon she will become good. When did you actually start coming to the class? I forgot the date. Sometime in June, right?
June.
Well, it was basically before July 22, right? Yes. Within that dasha. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. So with that, I will end for today. Next week's class will be with Pandit Sanjay Rath at the same time, in the same place. Actually, let's do one thing, because I don't want to rush him in the morning. Let me give Sanjay ji a little bit of time to get ready. 9 is too early for him. Maybe too early for him, because he's coming from London, and he may be jet lagged or whatever. So let me postpone next week's class to 9:30. So next week's class will be at 9:30. After that we will come back to 9, but just for next week, the class will be at 9:30, the same place, and I hope all of you and most of you who are listening will show up. Sanjay ji will be speaking to you. With that, I will end for today. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
So if he doesn't want to